Good evening to all of our Crime Talk aficionados and to all of those who are joining us for the first time. I want to thank everyone for being here. Whether you are on YouTube or joining us on Facebook, we are live streaming on both. And hey, feel free to subscribe, like, share from either channel. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about. There is so much to talk about. Just last week and part of this week, a lot of United States Supreme Court decisions came down. Be curious to know what you all think of that. Obviously, we have the news of Ghislaine Maxwell, former British socialite turned sex trafficker, was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The judge did what judges oftentimes do, which is to split the proverbial baby. The defense wanted 5 years. The government wanted 50. We'll go 20. There you go. She's 61 years old. Life expectancy in prison, it goes down. Basically, I think you lose, I think they calculate it. We were doing this on it was a life sentence case in federal court, and the life expectancy goes down like 10 years for every year. I mean, it's maybe it's not 10 years, but it's a significant amount. I mean, let's face it, you're not getting the best exercise, you're not getting the best food, you're not getting the best medical treatment that you could probably be getting. And let's face it, prison is a dangerous place. People in there will harm you for little to no reason, just because. And I've seen those reasons in cases that I've handled over the years that have been, usually it's in federal prisons. I don't get a whole lot of state prison cases other than maybe introduction of contraband type of thing. But the ones that actually hurt people, it's usually been in the federal system. And, I had a case once where a guy was microwaving his cup of ramen noodle soup in the microwave, and the other guy was cleaning the microwave, and the guy was microwaving his food didn't want the cleaner to get on the microwave for some reason. They got into a little spat. Then thereupon, a couple people maybe went back to their cells. It was all on video, of course. Maybe got themselves a little shiv, a knife, homemade knife that's going to puncture somebody. And then, came back and stabbed the victim in the lungs, in the back as they were trying to go up the stairwell to the next level tier. And just because. I mean, I've seen cases where people were killed in their cell for snoring too loud. Prison is a dangerous place. Okay. Life expectancy goes down. So Ghislaine Maxwell, 61 years old. I think she has a birthday coming up, or just maybe here real soon. Let's face it, unless this comes back on appeal, she'll probably serve, a good chunk of that. In the federal system, you have to serve 85% of your sentence. So that's significant. I mean, think about it. You get it just for easy numbers. You do a 10-year sentence, you're going to serve 85%, which is just about 8.5 years, right? So 20, you got 17 on a 20. That's a pretty good stretch, is it not? It's not like state courts, like some state courts, where you get a 10-year sentence and you could be eligible at 30%, right? So on a 10-year sentence, you're going to serve 3 years. Usually that's for nonviolent crimes. So, what do you do? In the feds, you're going to serve that time. So we'll see if Ghislaine Maxwell ultimately gets out. 20 years, though. And I get it. I have a similar situation where, people are alleged to have been victims of human trafficking. And of course, you ask the police and the DAs, well, where's the other people? How come you're not charging the Johns that you knew that they were, you know who they are. You can find them. Well, they have families. We don't want to embarrass them like that. I remember once I had a case years ago. It was kind of a big deal, and they put all of the girls' pictures that were charged in this big high-end prostitution scheme, on the front page of the newspaper, back when the newspaper. So maybe I'm dating myself here, a decade or so. And then, but not a single person on the other side was arrested at all. And I remember that was the thing that just upset um, the client, so to speak, so much, was because their pictures all over the front page, and the police knew who these other peoples were that were partaking because they had the address books, they had everything, and nothing came of it. In fact, I mean, there's allegation. It was the same organization that our mayor here in the city of Denver was allegedly visiting, but nobody seemed to care. Nobody seemed to care, and now he's on his last term. So I think it just shows you get the government that you deserve. Oh, and then let's not forget Alex Murdaugh. Are you kidding me? Like, this guy, he is so allegedly corrupt. We use allegedly because he hasn't been convicted of anything. But, he steals $4.25 million from his clients that we know about. He pays somebody to engage in an insurance fraud scam, allegedly, by having him shoot himself. That doesn't turn out so well. Now he's basically indicted for being a drug dealer as well. And don't forget, he's now also charged with, or his co-defendant, this, what's his name? Eddie Smith, Curtis Edward Smith. He's charged with money laundering over $2 million with Alex Murdaugh over the last several years. So the hits just keep on coming with this guy. And you want to talk about a guy that, and I love South Carolina. Okay. I am going to be spending my 4th of July in South Carolina. And I'm going to go down there and I'm going to see friends, and I'm going to go ask people when I go to my favorite cigar shop, and I'm going to ask them, because the last time I was down there, they said, it's the only thing that everybody's talking about. Oh, Alex Murdaugh. It's the talk of the town, because you really have to wonder, how could a guy like this in a position of power, him and his family, I mean, it's like, dare I say, they have been running a criminal organization for decades. We did a podcast about it. We didn't put it up on YouTube, but we did a podcast, which is why you need to go to your favorite podcasting app and download or listen to Scott Reich, CrimeTalk. And we have an episode about Alex Murdaugh's grandfather, who was actually indicted back in the 50s for basically allowing people to run illegal moonshining stills. And he was taking a cut, and everybody was taking a cut. And he was the prosecutor at the time. And the feds indicted him. And he was one of 34 people, only one of 34 people that were indicted that was found not guilty, coincidentally. So he quit being the prosecutor the day before the trial began, or maybe a week before the trial began, and then resumed his duties shortly thereafter because the people trusted him and just thought that he was a great guy. Now, of course, there were allegations of witness tampering and things of the such. But hey, so I think the people in South Carolina need to, the legal system down there maybe needs to take a little self-reflection here and see, how did this happen? How did we allow it to happen? And, allow it to get to this point. And and I don't know if it all started to come unraveled when his, son was in that boating accident that killed the young lady, Mallory Beach. Then Alex Murdaugh's son and his wife get murdered. Then he attempts to have somebody allegedly have him suicided on the side of the road with this Eddie Smith guy. Then they start digging into all the financial payments. His law firm is suing him. Everybody's just running from this guy. And now apparently the University of South Carolina School of Law, where his son Buster was going, said, well, maybe we'll come back in another year or so, when things are a little better for everybody involved. Of course, you got kicked out for plagiarism. So, I mean, I just think that when this case came out, and we can go back, 2 years now, I think it was, when that accident took place down there. I thought there's something about this case that just isn't right. It had all the kind of alleged corruption. You had allegations that the Murdaughs, the night that Alex Murdaugh's son ran the boat into the pier or the bridge over there by Parris Island, South Carolina, and Mallory Beach went missing, and they found her, I think, a day or two later, kind of washed up in the water, so to speak. But obviously she was deceased. But the Murdaughs swoop into the hospital down there, tell everybody, we're luring you up, don't say a word. They go in there. What do? They tell everybody.
All right, lawyer.
Right. Luring everybody up. But then, of course, they don't like people because, I feel bad because this young lady is my friend and he was drunk. And it turns out, all this, the lawsuits and everything starts just digging up. So, and don't get me wrong, I have lots of frustrations with the legal system. Now, I've done, primarily criminal, but we still do in my practice some civil work. And although it has its negatives and its flaws, usually in the adversarial system, the truth comes out because each side gets to ask questions. It's not like it's in the political arena where it says, if you don't like what I have to say, you are a terrible person and you can't say anything. And the person goes, well, okay, I won't say a word. In court, you get to ask the questions. That's the best part about being a lawyer, is you get to ask those elephant in the room questions, and the other person has to answer it. And through that process, we discover the truth. So yeah, we've got that. Like I said, and like I said, the Supreme Court. Wow. Some people are saying this is the greatest time for states' rights in a couple of centuries, maybe. Maybe since the country was founded. The Supreme Court basically has said in the gun case that was decided last week, hey, states, if it's an enumerated right, which means it's written down in the Constitution, don't mess with it. People have a right to possess firearms. Then you have the Dobbs decision, which comes down and says, hey, states, guess what? If it is not specifically in the Constitution, you probably don't have a right to that. And the states can decide whether they want to make it legal, illegal. They can regulate that under their police powers. So, interesting time, maybe breathing a little life into the 10th Amendment there, and not to get too geeky, lawyerish on that, but those have been some real interesting decisions over the last couple of, 2 weeks. And there's still another one to come down. I think probably tomorrow is the last. I think Thursday is the last day of the term. But the big one's going to be the whole EPA question about who has the power. Can Congress just delegate all these rulemaking abilities to these bureaucrats that aren't accountable to anybody and just say, go make these laws that are consistent with this, general policy. You guys figure it out. I personally think the Supreme Court is going to say, oh, no, EPA, you cannot do that. You need to have Congress do it. And then they're going to say, but Congress, we can't get anything done. We can't even agree upon it. And some people are going to say, well, that's great. And other people are going to say, that's good. I mean, when you go back and you look, legislators weren't supposed to be this knee-jerk reaction kind of thing to everything that happens. They were supposed to be slow and deliberate, and for it to affect everybody under the federal system, not just the state. It may be a state problem, but it may, just because it's a problem, let's say in Florida, doesn't mean they're going to have the same problem in Washington state. And so how can you make those rules that are applied to everybody in the same problem? So it's got to be of so much great importance that the feds should actually intervene one way or the other. So total geeky, I know, but let's do this. All right. So we're going to do something. We usually do this with just for our Patreons, but we're going to do it tonight as well. Okay. We're going to put up the phone line. Now, 725-228-TALK, 725-228-8255. If you call, okay, and you maybe put in a queue, because we got this fancy system where you'll be put in a queue. A couple of rules when you call. Okay. One, keep it short and succinct. Just say, hey, Scott, either you're the greatest or you're the biggest dummy I've ever heard on the internet. You can say that. That's all right. We become better when we have criticism. And the second thing is you have to actually call on your phone. Don't listen through your computer because there's a delay. And because of the delay, we're going to have a real weird conversation. It's not going to be interesting to you or me or anybody watching. So don't do that. Okay. So 725-228-TALK, 725-228-8255. Let me know whether you think Maxwell, 20 years, is that enough? Vallow. Oh, we forgot to mention Vallow Daybell, right? The court kind of does some housekeeping this past week with some orders saying, hey, I guess we better formally join her. And by the way, oh yeah, transfer those little formalities Judge Boyce had not got around to until this week. So I'm assuming the Idaho Supreme Court will grant the transfer and will also keep Judge Boyce on the case. All right. Frank, the hardest working man in show business, is not only keeping everything running, he's also let me know that we have a call. Frank, who do we have? Susan, how are you?
I'm fine, Scott. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Where are you calling from?
Kentucky.
The Bluegrass State. How are things down there for you?
Well, not bad.
Good.
But I have three really quick questions for you.
Okay, go ahead.
One, are you going to CrimeCon 23?
I think we have tentatively put it on the calendar. It's in Florida, I do believe. So
yes, it is in Orlando.
Yep. That's the plan.
Okay. Second off, would you ever take a case as high profile as, let's say, Daybell?
Sure. As long as I'm going to get paid. I don't do pro bono.
Hey, I don't blame you. And I just want to say, with the 4th of July coming up, I am a veteran. I know you're a veteran. I want to thank you so very much for your service and for this channel. I have been watching you since day one.
Well, I appreciate that.
And you give out such great information.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your service as well. I'm going to wish everyone a happy 4th of July. Have any big plans?
We're moving.
Oh, well, that's busy time. Yeah.
I've been listening to podcasts and YouTube. You're rewatching some of your episodes on YouTube while I've been packing.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's so easy to download and listen to it, right? You can listen to all the episodes there.
And
there's hundreds
say
of
hello
them.
to Camp Lejeune for me.
I'll be in South Carolina. Camp Lejeune's in North Carolina.
Oh, well, my dad was a Marine, so I've been there too.
Yeah, we're going to go down. We're going to be just in the Hilton Head area, enjoying I think the most beautiful beaches in America. I really do. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
And sometime in the future, you got to have the lovely Miss Krista on the show.
I have asked many times for the lovely Miss Kristen to come on the air. She does not want to be in front of the camera. And, I've even asked her, like, hey, why don't you just come help us grow the channel, and I think we're getting close. Maybe we'll see. One of
I
these
bet
days.
you don't want her because you're afraid she'll take over your channel.
That's okay. I am prepared to be a kept man by the lovely Miss Kristen. I will.
Okay. Well, you have a great weekend. Fly safe and enjoy your trip.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Bye.
So one of the questions go by here regarding, do you have to do any pro bono work? The answer is no, at least not here in the state of Colorado. I think some states have this rule, but let me tell you, from clients that stiff you on your bill, you don't get paid. That's basically pro bono work as far as I'm concerned. And then I took a case once. It was a client. And I remember it wasn't a serious case that I currently represented him on, but I'm sitting there in bed and I remember watching like the evening news and I'm like, hey, that's my client. Huh. That sounds serious. And it was all over the news. And, he came to talk. Went to talk to him and basically kind of convinced me like, hey, I don't have any money, but will you please represent me? I'm like, oh, this could be good. This would be, publicity, blah, blah, blah. Biggest mistake you ever made. Okay. Because when you do pro bono work, you have to do the case just like you are going to do it when you're getting paid. You're just not getting paid. And you need an investigator? Guess what? So now you're not only taking your own time out of your pocket, now you're putting money out of your pocket for a client. And let's just say, it was ugly. It was a bad case. And nobody cared about it by the time I got to trial. But to this day, the client still sends me a Christmas card. So I appreciate that. I think he appreciated we did a good job. And, things happen. But it was a bad case. So no, don't do pro bono work. My philosophy is, and a lot of people, this is why people hate attorneys, but I am just telling you why. Where else in the world can you walk in? If you walk into your grocery store and say, you know what? I'm hungry, got this big event coming up. I'd really like to just stock up on some food and I'll pay you over time. Okay, well, that's what a credit card company is for. All right. The Bank of Reich, we don't do that anymore. You go take a loan with somebody else. We don't do low pay, slow pay. Yeah, maybe make a payment here and there if it's a big case. But for the most part, if you can't afford to pay it, you're probably not going to be able to afford to pay it later down the road. I know that sounds harsh, but that's just the way it is. And after 27 years, I have figured out it is better to have not done the work and not got paid than to have done the work and not got paid. Okay. Still have an associate or two that I'm still trying to beat that into their skull. They somehow think it's good client relations to do free work. And I explained to them that, would you like me to take that out of your paycheck? Because you got paid, who's paying me, right? You get a paycheck twice a month, whether you need it or not. So there you go. Frank, do we have another call?
Yes.
All right. Vicky.
Hello,
Vicky. You're with Scott Rice here on Crime Talk. You're live. Where are you calling from?
Hi. I'm calling from Boise, Idaho.
Boise, Idaho. We're going to try to get out there. We're going to jump in Crime Talk 1 and come check things out.
When? Before the trial or just when it starts?
Before the trial, but the trial is expected to last, I think, January 9th of 2023 through like March 17th. So,
I didn't realize it was that long.
Yeah, that's how much time they have blocked out. That first week will probably be jury selection. But the reality
so excited,
of it is,
I can't even stand it.
I know, and it better be televised. That's for sure. I'll try to block it out. I don't know if I can be there for 3 weeks straight, unless I don't know, we get to like 1 million subscribers or something along those lines, and money's no object, so to speak. But in the meantime, I still have a law practice I have to run. So
I can always report for you. Because I'm going.
There you go.
There's no one gonna. I mean, honest to God, I hope that, I don't know how they do that, how they let people into or if they even will let people into the trial. But if they do, I'm going to be first in line.
Well, you have to get there early. Now, I explained this to Julie, who's no longer with us. She's off adventuring, becoming a pilot. But when we sent her down for the Barry Morphew motions hearings that were set for a week, I think the preliminary hearing actually, I said, you got to get there early.
Yeah.
And she's like, no. There were people out there like at 5 a.m. lining up to get a limited number of seats. So, and the Morphew case was not as big as the Lori Vallow case.
No, I don't think anything's as big as the Lori Vallow case, but I'm prejudiced. I know everything there is to know about the Lori Vallow case. I have read everything. I have heard every podcast. I have listened to. I mean, I am well versed in the Lori Vallow. And my friends at work are sick and tired of hearing about it.
I understand. It's going to be I think it's going to be just a big old fancy fashioned goat rope, so to speak. I think the prosecutors are in over their head. They got a client.
I do too.
I think the defense has no client control over Lori Vallow, or won't by the time we get to trial, and if she's even competent. And then we have Chad Daybell, who just kind of sits there. I mean, I don't think I've heard him say anything more than a couple of words other than when they read the indictment. He just kind of sits there with that face and that same white shirt.
Oh God, it's awful. It's awful.
So it's going to be a hoot. I cannot wait for it. It better be televised. That's all I've got to say. Or people are going to riot.
I hope it is.
Okay?
I happen to work. I work actually a couple blocks from the courthouse, so that won't be a problem. But and I work at 5 a.m. too, at Trader Joe's.
Okay.
Let me make a plug for that.
There you go.
Anyway, I happen to work with a man who is none other than Adam Cox's best friend. Grew up down the street
With
from
Alex
the
Cox.
Vallows,
Really?
from Lori Vallow. Yeah, no joke.
Wow.
No joke. He was just shocked about all of this, because they were just another Mormon family that he lived down at their house. When they were growing up as little kids. He said Lori, when she was a little kid, looked a lot like Tylee, kind of pudgy, kind of not. I mean, nothing against that, but that was sort of what she looked like. He said he said I never gave her a second look when she was a teenager, or otherwise.
Yeah.
But that's kind of interesting, huh?
Yeah, I mean,
And
what's normal? What's normal these days? I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why anything goes for normal these days.
That is true.
Which is probably why there's so many issues.
One other thing. There's one other thing, if I can remember it now, that I wanted to tell you. I truly do believe that when it comes to this case, I don't think that people really are giving credit to or making as big a deal out of it. The LDS portion of it.
Mm-hmm.
That part of the state where those people lived. I mean, you just don't live there unless you're LDS. And that religion is, and I'm not saying anything against it, but they help their own. They absolutely stand by their own. They are, if you own a business, they all are going to support you. There's a lot of money in the LDS church, and
Sure.
those guys, the tight knit, the way that they are, they just are very, very. I mean, it's almost sick, but I think that's been sort of. I don't think anybody understands it. I guess I grew up with it because I grew up in that side of the state,
Mm-hmm.
and they're thick as thieves, is what I'm saying. In an easy,
Yeah. No, I get it. We'll see. I mean, it's one of those things where they could either stick by them, potential jury, or they're going to say, "How dare you embarrass us?" And that could go,
well, there's that.
quite negatively for them. I've had that in trials over the years where clients will be like, of a particular, ethnicity or race, and they're like, "Oh, I want, this particular people on my jury." I'm like, "Are you sure you want that? Because they're responsible people, right? They're on jury duty,
Yeah.
and they're going to look at you and say, "Man, you're not, you're doing everything I'm completely against, so to speak," and they're going to be harsher on you. Okay. Just like if I was on jury duty, I would be harsher on the attorneys on both sides. Did they do a good job? Whether they did or not. So yeah, it just depends. Okay.
Well, when you come to Idaho and walk over to Trader Joe's for lunch
Okay.
and say hi.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thanks for calling.
Bye.
We'll give everyone advance notice when we're piling into Crime Talk 1 and heading over there to Boise. All right. All right. Somebody said, "Hey, Scott, please put up your 12 undeniable truths, please." Thanks for the super chat. Although we don't ask for super chats, we appreciate them, and it does certainly help highlight on my screen. So let's do this. Let's do a hard break. I will run to my office and I will get my 12 undeniable truths and go through those. And then we'll continue the conversation and take calls. Please go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up for a background subscription service. You'll be happy you did. If there's anyone out there you were ever curious about what was in their background, now is the time to do it. If you're going to get involved with somebody, now is the time to do it. When you go to crimetalksearch.com, you put in the name, literally millions of public records are searched and a report is generated. And it's going to give you a report. If they have multiple social media accounts, you're going to find it. If they have multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, it's going to be found. And more importantly, you're going to get information regarding criminal history. Hopefully the person you're searching has none whatsoever. But if it's there, it's going to be found. You're going to get everything you'd want to know, whether you're going into business or whether you're going into a personal relationship. You're going to be able to find out the information you want to know. So go to crimetalksearch.com, sign up today. You'll be happy you did. All right, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us. We got to pay the bills. First, before we get to the 12 undeniable truths, let's take another call. Claudia? Yeah. Good evening, Claudia. How are you?
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I want to tell you, I love your podcast.
Well, thank you.
I just really like it. I have been a true crime follower, for lack of a better term, since 1967 when I was a junior in high school and I followed the Alice Crimmins case. So I'm 71 now. So I have done my time, and I wanted to be an art therapist because I wanted to work with incarcerated felons and juvenile delinquents. In my innocence, I thought I could discover something nobody else could, but life got in the way, which is a good thing. But I'm calling tonight because of this Chandler Halderson thing. Okay. I actually screamed out loud when I read that they were going to do a retrial on this. The forensic on this, I watched this show. I was glued to that television set. It's amazing the work they did. It is amazing. Yeah. And the timing and the prison, everything was extraordinary trial. Definitely something that everybody could learn from.
I agree.
Then the last day, and he looks at the camera and says, "If anybody out there wants to represent me," and I thought to myself, this guy is really, And then somebody took it. Who the hell took that? I think they want to be able to write a book. Because why else?
Yeah, but you're somewhat limited as an attorney as to being able to write a book. The ABA has some rules out there that limits attorneys from basically taking a case to write the book, to get the rights, so to speak, to the story. So, who knows?
Well, I read the Defending a Monster, the John Wayne Gacy, Sam Amarante.
Sure.
I don't know. Maybe he wrote that after John Wayne Gacy was electrocuted. or killed whoever.
I believe
they
he
did
was,
to him.
because his son has those tapes, I believe.
Okay. Because again, every law student should have to read that book. Well, actually, I think they should do it in high school, so it explains that everybody deserves to have a defense,
Oh, I'll be the
and
first
that
one
there are two sides to every story.
I will be the first one to tell that to everybody, that everybody has a right to a good criminal defense attorney, hopefully an excellent criminal defense attorney, so that whether somebody's guilty or not, then that is
Right.
figured out at court, and not after somebody has to spend any more time in prison than they shouldn't have if they were innocent. Who would want an innocent person
Now,
to go to prison? I would hope
But
no one.
Chandler Holerson, they found the heads in the fireplace at the house. I mean,
Yeah, it's pretty. I think everyone can sleep well at night knowing that that case is not going to come back on appeal. And I guarantee you, if there is an issue, it will be what they refer to as the SOB rule at the Court of Appeals. And they're going to say, this guy's an SOB. We don't want him back on the streets. So they will say, although there was error, it was harmless in light of the overwhelming evidence presented at trial, which is, hey, you're entitled to a fair trial, not a perfect trial. And then, therefore, it doesn't make any difference because there's so much overwhelming evidence. Get over it. Go enjoy your new home in prison for the rest of your life.
okay. So what, I misunderstood it then, because I really went a little bonkers. So all they're doing in January is to say whether he can be retrialed or not. It's not that he's definitely gotten the right to retry.
I'll be honest with you.
Because
I'm not
the cost
familiar
of this must have been astronomical.
I'm not familiar with
On top of it.
a motion that was filed for a new trial or something along those lines. I'm not familiar with it. So, but I just can't imagine the court's going to say, I mean, unless the attorney basically says, hey, I was, inebriated the entire course of the trial. I did no preparation. Unless the attorney's going to say that, I don't think it's coming back.
And he can't all of a sudden become mentally ill either.
Oh, he can claim it.
I don't know.
Listen, people claim lots of things. People play games all the time in the criminal justice system. But
Yeah.
what these defendants don't realize is, do you really think you're the first one that's tried to play this game? The incompetent game. Oh, the voices made me do it, whatever, something along those lines. You really think that's the case? And if that would have been the case, it would have come out early on in the case.
Right.
And the professionals, that when people play these games, they know what they're looking for. And if it's there, it's there. So be it. We don't want to, go forward on somebody that's not competent and doesn't understand the proceedings. Right. So I wouldn't lose too much sleep over it at night.
I was furious. Now, and I'm just going to ask one thing and then I'll let the next person go.
Okay.
Now, where is Ghislaine going to do her time?
Ghislaine Maxwell, she will do it at a women's facility. Let me see if I have my little book with all the facilities.
Will she be at the same place Martha Stewart was at?
I don't know.
Hillsborough, I think it was called.
Frank is telling me they may have already designated her to go to Connecticut. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
So the judge recommended, usually what happens is the defense asks for a particular place to go. The judge then can make a recommendation, and that's all it is a recommendation. However, the Bureau of Prisons likes to try to accommodate the judge's request. So if she has family nearby, they'll try to do that. Sometimes it's a security issue thing. They could send her wherever. It's ultimately up to the Bureau of Prisons, but the judge will try to accommodate the request if they believe it's reasonable. And then the Bureau of Prisons will try to accommodate the judge's request if they can do that as well. I had a call today with somebody that, everybody said, hey, let's keep, the defendant in this particular location. They sent him to a different state. And I telling the family, like, that's a Bureau of Prisons issue. I can't help you. There's nothing I can do at this point. So, all right. Thanks for your call. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great night. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
you too. One more, Frank? Terry. Terry, you're on.
Hi, Scott. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Go ahead. Where are you calling from?
Wonderful. I am calling from Clinton, Indiana, a little town.
All right.
And I was reading recently, an audiobook of a very, very old case. It's from 1959, and I'm sure you've heard it, In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. And I have never heard this case before. So it was quite intriguing. It was out of Kansas, as you probably know, out of Holcomb, Kansas. And the case was a death penalty case. And what I want to know, in your opinion, and I'm kind of going, it has nothing to do with today's cases. I just wanted to know your opinion. Based on the testimony and everything that happened and how this went about in the proceedings and so forth, do you, in your opinion, do you feel that Hickok really should have been the one that was hanged? I know Perry definitely, because he's the one that pulled the trigger. But do you feel that Hickok, Richard, they called him Dick, do you really feel that he definitely should have been hanged? I mean, but I mean, do you think that he deserved that as well?
I'll be honest with you.
That's my question. I thought of you when I heard the book.
I haven't read the book, and I'm not familiar with the case. I'm sorry. Why don't you tell me? Do you think the guy deserved to be hung? Hung?
I'm sorry, I my phone messed up. What did you say?
I'm not familiar with the book. I'm not familiar with the case. So I can't really tell you if I thought somebody deserved to be put to death.
Okay.
But you read it. Why don't you tell me?
Okay.
What's the big issue?
Well, it's just when I heard the whole narrative, and I heard the evidence, and I heard how the defense lawyers wanted to appeal, and because they wanted them to have a life sentence, not be put to death. And this case stalled for a while.
Well,
it took 5 years before they were actually hanged.
Well, that's pretty quick.
That was the death penalty.
That's pretty quick these days compared to these standards.
It was. Yeah.
Well, here's what I'll do. I'll look into the book. And I will read it, and we'll see what we can come up with. All right.
Oh, I think you'll like it.
All
okay.
Right.
Thank you for listening to me.
Right.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
I love your show, by the way.
All right. Thank you so much. One more call, Frank. Who do we have?
Shut up, I can cook.
All right. Shut up, I can cook.
Oh, hi. Good evening or good day. I don't know where you are. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you just fine. Where are you calling from? What's your question?
I'm in New York City.
Okay.
And I've been trying to get an opposite view of the SCOTUS's decision, but I don't see any so-called middle or conservatives talking about it. I see all what we call the left, and so I'm wanted to know what your opinions were on Roe being struck down as it was, and the concealed carry, because I'm in New York. They are out of their minds saying, "Oh my God, people are gonna have guns," other than the criminals. And since I wrote down something else. There's another case. SCOTUS also struck down New York City legislators, New York State, actually had written into law to give non-citizens the right to vote in local elections.
Yeah.
And SCOTUS also struck that down.
Well, that wasn't the
So I
Supreme
just
Court.
want your
That,
opinion on
that
those.
was the New York
New York
highest
State.
Supreme
Okay.
Court that struck down the
Mm.
provisions that New York City put into place, saying anybody can vote, but the state constitution said only the people that can vote are citizens of the United States. So once again, it goes back to the plain language. People like to change the law, but they don't like to read the starting point of the law. And if you don't like the starting point of the law, just like a lot of people don't like the Constitution and what's in it, but we here love the Constitution. We love all of the amendments to the Constitution. And
So
but
do
you
I.
have to read it at the time that it was written. Now, some people would say, Scott, that's just an old-fashioned way of saying it. It's called an originalist. And let me tell you, frankly,
Yes.
I remember I was, before I became a lawyer, when I was a young lawyer, it was like no big deal. But then I started going to court and I'm saying, Judge, the statute says you have to do A, B, and C. They didn't do A, B, and C. They only did A and B. So therefore they didn't comply and they can do it. What? And then the judges start doing this legal maneuvering around and they try to get to the point, which is usually to screw my client who's a criminal defendant. Okay. And it really gets frustrating when you go in there and it says very plainly, this is what the words say. And you have to give plain meaning to those words unless they're specifically defined otherwise in the statute. And remember, who makes the statutes? The legislature. Okay. So if a statute is written poorly in the state legislatures or in Congress, blame the Congress people, blame the state legislatures who don't read the stuff, right? Remember when there's all
Oh, my
legislation?
goodness.
Well, we have to pass it before we can figure out what's in it to read it.
Oh,
It's
my
not
goodness.
supposed to work that way. Okay. That's
No,
crazy.
No.
So then you have like I
Yes.
said, the original, and we're not talking political. This is just what lawyers are taught to do, to read that's what judges are supposed to do. They're supposed to read the statute, give plain meaning and effect to the language of the statute, apply those facts to the law, and see whether they've met the requirements under the law. That's all judges are supposed to do. Call balls and strikes. Hey, poorly written statute. Sorry, legislature. You can go fix it the next term in the legislative session. But a lot of people said, no, we don't like to do that. We'll just want a judge to say, and I swear to God, there's case law out there, and this is getting kind of geeky,
Oh, my goodness.
but there's actually case law out there that says if something says you must do A, B, and C, that you can do that, and could be interpreted as an or. Okay. Now, tell me how intellectually dishonest that would be for somebody to say we have to and do this, but that really could be an or you could do that. That makes no
Oh,
sense,
my
right? I've had a judge
Right.
actually tell me that, well, there's some case law out there that says that and could mean an or, so therefore they didn't have to do C. And I literally looked at her from the podium, dead in the eye, and I said, that would be intellectually dishonest, because nowhere, and although I have, I'm just educated in public schools, I know what the difference between the words and or mean. Okay. And if people wanted to put
One
the
or
word,
the other.
and when rules are written and supposedly reviewed by lawyers or legislators, and they put an and versus an or, then that's what it means. Just
Mhm.
because they were not smart enough to put it in that context doesn't mean that my client should get screwed by it. And so that's why I became very adamant as to what words mean, that they mean what they say. Okay. And that's it. And think about it. Let's say you buy your house and you get your deed and it says that you own this property from here to here to here. And you bought it knowing that that was the description and you relied upon it. And 40 years later, somebody comes back and says, you know what, Scott, that description they made, we just shortened it by 10 feet on each side. Sorry about that, but you understand, it's for the greater good. I don't care about the greater good. My only interest is for my client, or my example about the house is my good. Like, if they want the greater good, then pay me for it, right? That's what most people would definitely say, right?
Yes.
You'd think so, common sense. So now, this is not a political view on Roe v. Wade, not political anyway. It is a legal analysis. And I mentioned this story the other night. When I was in law school, first semester, you take constitutional law. It's a whole year-long course. And one of the cases, obviously, is that you discuss Roe v. Wade. And I remember my professor getting up there saying, I think this is the right decision. It was just the wrong way that they got about it. It's poorly written. And even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right, has stated that she, before she passed away, that she thought that there were some flaws in the analysis of Roe v. Wade. Okay. It's that simple. Now, this is not political. I'm a very, what's the word? Very libertarian.
We're talking about the law.
We're talking about the law. Okay.
Yeah.
Roe goes up to the Supreme Court. Lady in Texas, they make up her name to be Roe, so she maintains her anonymity. I think she later came out later, but whatever. Goes up, says, hey, she sues the district attorney of Dallas. It goes up, Roe v. Wade. Supreme Court split plurality decision, 5-4, basically comes up and says that somebody has a privacy interest under the Fourth Amendment, and they use this word, penumbra of the Fourth Amendment. It's like an umbrella, penumbra. It's encompassed in there. And of course,
Latin, right?
the people that opposed that 1971 decision, I think it was 71 or 73, basically said, you just made this up. Nowhere in the Constitution does the word abortion exist. And frankly, if you went back to the time that it was written, that was probably the last thing on the minds of the founding fathers, to make sure that a woman's right to an abortion was put in there. Okay. So over the years, and there's been cases, Casey v. Pennsylvania, I think, that also came out and basically said, hey, you can have it. And there were more restrictions. You can't put unreasonable restrictions on getting an abortion. Okay. And everybody knows some states would ban it. Other people would be like, hey, I think California, here in Colorado, you could have an abortion all the way up to the time the child is born. Okay. But that's up to the people. So the people get to decide. It's kind of like, you guys decide what you want. And if you don't like it, guess what? You can move. You can do that. We'll see. I mean, some states have already said they've fixed it, so to speak, how they want it. Other states, there'll be litigation. But basically what it said is, this Dobbs case said, there's no constitutional right to an abortion. But guess what? We're not outlawing it. We're just saying you don't have a federal right to it. The only way you could come up with a federal right to it is somehow pass legislation, or better yet, go amend the Constitution, have a constitutional amendment to it, right? So what the court really said in Dobbs was, hey, if it's not mentioned in the Constitution, you really can't federalize it unless you want to amend the Constitution, that is. And then in the New York gun owners case, where they said, hey, you have a right to defend yourself, because New York put these unreasonable restrictions, the court said, on people obtaining a permit.
Insane. New York is insane. Only criminals get to have a weapon.
That's impossible.
Only criminals.
That's impossible, because pistols are nearly impossible to get in the state of New York. That's not possible. I don't believe it.
Well, they have them. Don't you see the news? They're shooting each other every day.
Every day. I do. I see it.
Every day.
I was being facetious when I said that can't happen, because they banned criminals from having guns.
Yes, I know. Oh, okay. My goodness.
But what the Supreme Court said here, and they built upon the decision in Heller, which was a case out of Washington, D.C., maybe 10 years ago, which basically said you have a right to defend yourself in your home. that was the issue there. A gentleman by the name of Heller in Washington, D.C. wanted to get a permit to have a gun in his home, and they denied it. And the Supreme Court said, you have a right to defend yourself in the home. The case in New York Gun Owners Association, these two gentlemen wanted to get a permit to have a gun basically on their person. And the burden was on the individual to show that they had this extreme need for it. And the Supreme Court says, New York State, you can't do that. We've already said you have a fundamental right to possess a firearm. Fundamental right being the equivalent of
It's the
all your rights
Second
under
Amendment to the United States Constitution.
Correct. They found
and it does not exist in New York State.
They found it to be a fundamental right under the Constitution that you have a right to possess a firearm. And here they said, once again, what does the plain language of them mean? Right to bear arms, to possess it. That doesn't just mean in your home. You have a right to possess it on your person. So they said, New York, you got to give these people permits. Yeah, you can still do a background check, maybe make them take a class, but they don't have to prove that they are somehow in greater need just because some bureaucrat who thinks we're going to make the world safe because there's no guns, because anybody with 2 cents of brain capacity will realize that the criminals are going to get guns. Take it from a criminal defense attorney. I've represented many a criminal that got a gun. And I asked them, like, you couldn't have a gun. They're like, yeah, but it's dangerous out there, man. It's dangerous. I got to be able to protect myself. And they'll be like, and when I get done serving this case, I'm going to go get a gun again. Okay. Criminals are going to have the gun. I'm like the go-between between the, what the criminals are thinking, so to speak, and the rest of everyday America here. Okay. They are going to get the guns. So that's the New York case and then the Doe case. All right. Thanks for your call. I appreciate it. I got to take a break.
Okay. You deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Sorry to get all fired up, but that stuff it's like, I've used this. A judge is supposed to be like an umpire, call balls and strikes. They don't care how things come out, their own personal agenda. If the umpire likes, let's say they're playing the Yankees versus the Mets, and they've loved the Mets. They can't make the strike zone, a little wider for the Mets and hold that bias. If they can't put that bias away, then they shouldn't be an umpire. Okay. Recuse yourself if you don't think you can do it. But so many times judges look at it and they refer to that as an activist judge. Like, what does it say? And I remember, and I actually got the privilege to see Antonin Scalia speak. It was an event. I actually met him twice. One was at Naval Justice School. I think we showed that picture one time. This was a long time ago. It's like 1996. He came up to speak to our naval justice class. And then I saw him at an event here in Denver. He was promoting a book. I think it's at home, but it's a signed copy from Justice Scalia. And he gives the example of the case of the flag burning. And I can't remember, but it was a case out of Texas where they made it illegal to burn or destroy an American flag. And Justice Scalia said, I find that absolutely offensive. But that is the epitome of First Amendment speech. And even though I didn't like the decision, my job as a judge was to read the Constitution for the words, the plain meaning, giving plain meaning and effect to those words. And he'll say, I was the fifth vote in a 5-4 decision saying that it is unconstitutional to have a law saying that you cannot destroy the American flag. And it didn't really sink in until I started getting just screwed by these judges who were making stuff up because they are not fair and impartial. They are biased towards the prosecution. They want to get reelected. They don't want to be the guy that let the bad guy go. And so then you have to go to court and you have to go to trial and you lose because the judge screws you. And then the appellate courts say, you know what? Scott was correct. Okay. Not all the time. Don't get me wrong. Appellate courts disagree with me many times, but I'm thinking of the cases where my client got screwed. And if the judge ruled like he should have, like the Court of Appeals said he should have, my clients wouldn't have had to go spend time in prison for something that should not have come into evidence. So, wow. Can you believe how fast that goes? So fast, so fast. But here's what we're going to do. If you'd like to continue the conversation, hopefully you all would, we're going to jump over to do our Patreon show. So if you have not become a Patreon, it does not cost much. But when you do, you get access to kind of cool stuff. You get the trial guide. You get all the evidentiary objections and explanations of the rules of evidence when you join. Great little thing to have there in trial, even when you're watching it on the internet or TV, wherever. You start realizing, hey, that's hearsay. Hey, that's not relevant. What element does that fact go to prove or disprove about this case? It doesn't. Oh my gosh, that's uncharged misconduct. He should be objecting to 404B evidence. You will know. You will practically be a lawyer when you become a Patreon, and you get basically your trial pack of everything that you need. And yeah, you can get it super easy. Let's see here. Let's just see if there's a couple questions here before I go through here. Scott's on fire. Oh yeah, Jenlo. Yeah, CrimeTalk merch. You can go check out our stuff. Okay, AJ's. How can the justices ignore the last 50 years of our American history and tradition, but go back 150 and 200 and call it history and tradition? It's so weird to me. AJ's, good question. And I think that's even a super chat if I didn't forget that. Well, AJ, let's talk about that. We had a couple of laws that the Supreme Court overturned. Their opinions, Plessy v. Ferguson, saying that slavery was okay. Thank God they overturned that decision. Didn't say, oh, well, slavery, no, overturned it. Separate but equal, Brown v. Board of Education, reversed prior case law, saying that that was okay. But going back the 150, 200 years of tradition is you have to give that's what I'm saying. You have to give the plain meaning and effect to the words as they were written at the time that they were written. Like I said, just go back to the deed, right? You get this deed to this big piece of property. And if you ever read an old deed, you're like, wow, that's some fancy language. And oh, wow, look at that. But that's what it meant at the time. So you can't come in and say, well, it's 2022 and it's really inconvenient for us. And judge, that word doesn't mean what it means today. So you just got to ignore it and go with that. And some judges will do that, but you're not supposed to. You have to interpret the document. It's what they teach you in law school. They have books written about statutory interpretation. And it's the law in opinions. It says, Supreme Court says, you have to give plain meaning and effect to the words that they were written at the time that they were written. That's the way it's supposed to be done. And here's the thing. If you don't like it, you can amend the Constitution. You can do it at any time. Now, it's difficult, but we have done it many times over the years. And I'm looking for my little Constitution, but I do not see it at this very moment. But we've done it. You can do it. You just can't say, well, we just need to find the right judge that's going to go along with us and change it. Okay. You have to change the law if you don't like it, but you can't just say the judge says, well, this word that meant this suddenly no longer means that. I know. And what the Supreme Court did in the Dobbs decision was, the old court can giveth, the court can taketh away. The court created that right. It didn't exist. It's made up. That's why people sometimes say an activist court is like a super legislature, because the individuals, the people in the state, don't get to vote upon it. They don't get to have their say. The court just says, one day, this is it. That's it. And if it's going to change, based upon who's in basically power next, then we start turning into a third world banana republic. But as we've talked about before, the whole point is that the the law has to be able to explain how it got there. They just can't come out and one day say, this is it. Now, instead of the word blue is no longer blue, it means red when we mean it so, but only when it's convenient for us, right? Okay, Lady Chaos. Scott, I've asked this so many times. Scott, I've asked you so many times. Please answer this. Do you still work as an attorney? Yes, I do. Okay. Still have an active practice. I have 5 attorneys that work for me, and take cases, try cases. I mean, last week I was in a sentencing for a homicide case in federal court. Tomorrow I'm in court on a racketeering case. So yes, we still take that. What is your most memorable case? There's so many of them. I mean, it depends. And sometimes you forget about cases. Sometimes they're memorable for the wrong reasons, so to speak. I still think the case that I really remember, it was my first homicide case. I was second chair on the case. I had just got out of the Marine Corps, opened up my shop, and it was basically, I was court appointed, but I got court appointed to be second chair with a very experienced criminal defense attorney. He was a former prosecutor before that, and he was just an all-around great guy. Really let me dig into it, get into it really deep. And I remember I got to do the cross-examination on one of the key witnesses, and he's like sitting there, I didn't notice that. And I'm like, yeah, because I've been working this, right? And my client who's charged, he was always like, he wasn't there. He wasn't there. That was the defense. No big surprise. He wasn't there. He was there, but then he left. Somebody came in and obviously committed the homicide. And I'll never forget, the other attorney gets up, does this amazing cross-examination with the little girl. And she's like, yeah, the defendant, he was there, but he left. And it was one of those just like Perry Mason moments, like, oh my gosh, this is great. And the attorney comes over. His name is Peter, walks over, and he sits, kind of puts his head right between, the client and I were right next to each other. And he goes, any further questions that we should ask? And I'm like, no, I think you covered it all, all serious. And the client looks up to him and says, I got a question. How many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop? And we just kind of look at him, and he goes, nah, I got nothing. But it was that moment when your clients are human, and he just always knew that everything was going to be okay. And he was ultimately found not guilty. So it's always nice when your first homicide trial is a not guilty. So that was obviously very memorable. But then I had one that we just did during COVID. Serious case. I got the complaining witness on the stand to basically admit that she lied. She made it all up. Once again, 27 years. Never had that one happen to me before, right? Like, what? Okay, I'm just going to sit down now. And then the prosecutors get up and act like she didn't say it. No, the mean defense attorney, you must not have understood the question. And they're like, no, I'm sorry. It wasn't, and the jury found him not guilty, So I mean, there's so many things. There's cases where I had a client that he was, I'd represented him. And one day I get a call from a SWAT team saying that your client's been involved in a hostage situation. He wants to talk to you. I'm like, okay, I'm in court. But I'm like, hey, Your Honor, can we call my case? Because I got to go. Weird hostage situation. So I get there and, talk to my client and think everything's going to be fine. And then you hear that the police had gone in and they had shot and killed the client, and the young child that was in part of the hostage situation was okay. No, I take that back. He passed away as well. And I remember, sitting up there by the little police station, and all of a sudden they start packing everything up. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? Situation's been resolved. Suspect's been neutralized. We're packing up. and you're just kind of sitting there like, okay, it's like 10:30 in the morning. I've been to court. My client's been killed. I guess I'll go back to the office and get some dictation done. It's stuff like that that you just you don't know what's going to happen on any given day. What's going on? So yeah. So hopefully that answers the question. Because I know you've been asking it forever. Sorry we didn't answer it sooner, but that was it. All right. Oh, truth. 12 truths. Trish Norman. Ooh, wow. Should we save it for the Patreon show, to make everybody come over and do this? Or should we just do it, Frank? Should we give them? Let's just give it to them. This is what they want. Okay. And I think, did AJ have a couple more questions in there? I want to make sure I follow up on his question. We appreciate you, Scott, and you too, Jen Lowe. Thank you, AJ. Appreciate it. And here's the thing. If you got a question, like I said, you don't have to do super chat. Eventually we'll get it. Sometimes we get on a roll and, you just can't do it. Super chat from Elise. She had trouble, so I'm sending it for Elise. Thanks. Well, thanks. Shut up. I can cook. Appreciate that. Thanks from calling from New York too. And go get yourself a gun. It's legal in New York now. God, wouldn't you love to be the guy that goes into that guy in the New York, some bureaucracy, probably miserable, hates his job every moment of every day of his life. It's like, fine, I can't deny any more permits. I got to let it go. All right. Let's do the 12 undeniable truths from a criminal defense attorney. Okay. The first of the 12 undeniable truths, and I've seen this always comes true. Be humble. All right. There are two types of people in the world, those that are humble and those that are about to be. Think about it. Everybody's been humbled, no matter how great everyone thinks you are, no matter how great you think you may have been doing. Think about it. Everyone has been humbled. Think of all the politicians that thought they couldn't lose or got in trouble. They were invincible. Sports figures. How about those guys, that Harvey guy, that movie producer guy? I won't mention his name because they'll get us demonetized. But think about him. Thought he was beyond touchable. It's best to be humble. Be nice to people, because when the crap does hit the fan, they're going to remember whether you were nice to them or whether you were that jerk. We've all been there. We've all experienced it. Okay. I think I've told this story before a couple of times. I remember coming home, being like, I just won my trial today. Who's the best trial lawyer you ever saw? And my kids got it. They played along. Like, we're looking at him, Dad. We're looking at him. And then my wife would look at me and say, yeah, that's great. And the garbage needs to be taken out because the trash man's coming tomorrow. Oh, okay. Yeah, thanks. So be humble, because you know what? The trash still needs to be taken out. Another example I had, swear to God, this was maybe 5 years ago. Walk a client for second time on a homicide case. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Like, remember that scene from The Right Stuff? The guy's driving down the road. They're driving to Edwards Air Force Base. Can't remember which one it was. And his wife's angry at him. And she's like, come on. Who's the best fighter pilot you ever saw? Who's the best? She's like, you're looking at him. That was my joke. Who's the best trial lawyer you ever saw? Right. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself, right? Just do this. And then I go across the street to a new client. It was a jail advisement. Family had hired me. Hadn't really had time to talk with the guy because I've been in trial, but hey, trial's over. So I'm here. Let's see if we can get you out of custody. Remember, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. And I make my argument to the judge. I thought it wasn't too bad, but, Facts being what they are, the judge says, no, I'm not going to reduce this bond. Your client's a danger to the community and a flight risk, and I find as such. And I was like, oh, that's unfortunate, man. Sorry, you're going to have to stay here or post the bond. The amount's currently set. He looks at me and he's like, what kind of lawyer are you? You couldn't even get a bond reduced. And I'm like, you're right. I'm a terrible lawyer. I'm sorry. So even when you got those high moments, yeah, enjoy them, but you got to be humble and just be, moving on in. Next, undeniable truth. No one's perfect. Okay. We all make mistakes. You got to know your weaknesses, seek self-improvement, focus on your strengths. Oh yeah. And hire people to do what you are not very good at doing. Okay. No one's perfect. You can't do it all. There's not enough hours in the day. You just have to hire people that are good doing other things you can't. Otherwise, you're going to kill yourself. Okay. And just remember, we're all flawed human beings. All right. Just because you're not good at something, doesn't mean you give up at it first time. You can practice it. But at some point, maybe it's not what you're cut out to be. So you got to do that. Number 3, we're all flawed. So don't be too judgmental. We are all hypocrites. It's just a matter of degree. Okay. How many times have we all said, that is the worst case. I can't believe that happened. Oh, they need to go to prison. They should die, blah, blah, you name it. And that happens to your friend or family member or you. And suddenly it's like, but I'm a person. Sure, I've made a mistake, but I'm not, that one day doesn't define me. And, normally it should not. Sometimes that one day can define you forever. But the reality of it is, listen, we've all made mistakes. We're all flawed. Don't be too judgmental on everybody because bottom line is it can happen to you. Number 4, it's always about the money. Remember that, ladies and gentlemen. And when they say it's not about the money, then it really is all about the money. Okay? Just the way it is. If they're suing you, it's about the money. Johnny Depp. If it wasn't about the money, now he may say, oh, it's not about the money. I'm not going to take it, right? But at the end of the day, he sued for $50 million. He gets the 8.35 at the end. It's always about the money, ladies and gentlemen. Now you may act like it isn't now, no big deal, but it was at some point. We like people to like and subscribe. Why is that? Well, because we like to make this worth my while. I enjoy doing it, but I'd also like to maybe, not spend, I could spend my days doing this, not my one night a week or, throughout the day, doing it full time. And how do we do that? Well, Scott is not that old. He still needs to make money. All right. So just remember that it's always about the money. Just like I told you tonight. And I tell you it straight up. I don't do pro bono work. Don't do it. I'm at the point in my life where I don't even represent friends free anymore. Just the way it is. Because if I do it for free or pro bono, I'll do it when I get around to it. But the friend, still wants you to do it as if you're client number 1, even though you're not getting paid, right? We run a business in our law practice. It is a business. And if somebody doesn't want to worry about making money, then you need to go work in the government to make money. But guess what? Even government attorneys have to try to bring in money. Not maybe as public defenders, but if you work for an agency, you're trying to come up with ways to take other people's things and money and tax them to make money to justify your existence. It's always about the money. Remember this. Most people don't have troubles. They have inconveniences. Okay. Think about that. Everybody is like, oh, you're not going to believe what happened. This is terrible. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. If you think about it, yes, I understand things happen. And I remember being young and broke and the car breaks down and you don't have the money to do it. But normally you find a way, you figure it out. If you got to go hustle to make that money, you do it, what you have to do to get it done. Okay. But at the end of the day, that's an inconvenience. Okay. You're not, if you're going to prison or somebody's died, those are real troubles. Okay. Going back to when I was married, my ex-spouse would be like, the lawn guy's coming tomorrow. Oh, okay. That's great. We need to pick up the dog poop. Didn't the dog poop guy come to pick up the dog poop? Right. And it would be the biggest argument ever. It's like, well, you need to go pick up the dog poop because the lawn guy doesn't like to come. Even though the dog poop guy came the other day, there may be poop out there and he doesn't like it when he gets on his tractor. Okay. Now I could have argued about it. Like, fine, I'll go pick up the dog poop because the guy didn't like it and he wouldn't mow the lawn if there was dog poop back there. Inconvenience. Okay. But the guy acted like it was the biggest trouble in the world to clean a little dog poop off of his wheel. Like, really? You're mowing lawns with people with dogs. Maybe you should take it out. But take a deep breath. Namaste. Just remember inconveniences. Okay. And when you have real trouble, like when someone's really ill, maybe going to prison, those are real problems. So take time to appreciate what you have. Bottom line. Next, number 7, make a decision. Indecisiveness is the worst thing in the world. And every now and then I'm like, yeah, let me think about it. But I usually kind of already know what I'm going to do, but I'm just thinking about it. Maybe I'll change my mind, talk myself out of it. But you need to make a decision in life. Because if you don't make a decision, guess what? Then people will make decisions for you and you're probably not going to like it. Okay. What's that saying? If you don't have a place at the table, that means you're being served for dinner. Bottom line. And the way you do that is you make your decisions. You have to go for it. You have to say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to go forward. It may be a little risky, but I'm going to make a decision. And guess what? Indecisiveness is a decision. It's a decision for people to make decisions for you. Okay. And in the criminal context, where does that come into? At a certain point, a client has a situation where they need to decide, are they going to go to trial or are they going to take a plea bargain? And the client's always like, well, I don't want to plead guilty because then it says I'm guilty because I don't think I'm guilty. But the alternative is I have to go to trial and I don't want to go to trial because that could be bad for me. Yep. Indecision. Well, guess what? That DA is going to revoke that offer and we're coming up on trial. So you need to make a decision or one will be made for you, which is we're going to trial. Okay. Make a decision or people will make it for you. Next, a job expands to the amount of time given. Give deadlines and remember, things always take longer than you think they will. Why do we have deadlines in the legal system? Because if we didn't have to have a deadline, no decisions would ever get made. I would have clients who would be absolutely fine with no decisions being made on their case. But you have to do that. Whether it's a work environment, you know how it is. You have to have the house clean before this particular time, before you leave. You got to get this brief done. Anything along those lines. We've all done it. If you know you have a certain amount of time, you're going to stretch it out. But always remember, okay, things always take longer than you think they will. I'm the eternal optimist. I always think, I got a brief to do. It'll take no time at all. I'll knock this out in one day. And it turns out this is a 3 or 4 day task. All right. So at least I had deadlines and I always set deadlines before the deadlines. Okay. This is my deadline. I want that deadline docketed 7 days before and 14 days before, because I know it's coming and it's going to help me at least get started. You have to do that. Next, number 9, you would be surprised how far the words, I am sorry, goes. And you would think, oh, Scott, but listen, and I am generally of the mindset that you don't apologize for things that you didn't do wrong. Okay. I make it a general pattern. If we go to trial and we lose, or You get the sentence you don't necessarily want. You don't tell it, well, sorry, man, that sucks. Because as soon as you start saying you're sorry, it means that you've maybe done something wrong. But the reality of it is, usually if it maybe requires a sorry, it may require I'm sorry. And that can go a long way. I have been in sentencings where the family has shown up at every court proceeding, say for a homicide case, because their child was killed, and they show up. They're there every day. And, you know, whether it's a plea or a trial, a guilty plea, and the family just wants to know what happened, why you did it, etc. And the defendant in some courtrooms the defense goes first. The defendant always gets the last word. But sometimes if that defendant can say, I'm sorry, that I have seen make more people come to the point where they literally forgive somebody in a courtroom for killing their child. Okay. And it's amazing to see that, because it's happened more than just one time. And it was just the simple words, I'm sorry. And so it's just, you know, something to go by. You know, I mean, I always say use please and thank you. Could you please do this? Thank you for doing that. Makes a huge difference versus barking orders. Do this, do this. Hey, can we please do this? You think we can get this done? You know, it makes a big difference. Like please and thank yous. And so does the words, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I'm have to have you start over. I completely did it. Oh, that's okay. But at least you said you're sorry. There's some people that don't ever say that word. And I get it, but sometimes it goes. Next one in life. Trust your lawyer. Okay. So many people out there, particularly in the age of the internet, they don't trust their lawyer. It's kind of like they don't trust their doctors anymore because they read about it on WebMD and they've read all about it and they know everything they need to know. It's that simple. You hired the lawyer. You're paying them $400, $600 an hour to work on your case, to review it, to analyze it, to come to the position where they can give you advice on how to proceed. And yes, ultimately the decision is the client's decision, but the attorney is not going to give you bad advice. I hope not. Most attorneys I know take their responsibility very, very seriously, just like doctors do. There's always going to be the nutball in the bunch, but let's face it, most of the attorneys, doctors, CPAs take their jobs very seriously. They do not want to give bad advice. I've said this before. When I give advice to my clients, it's literally like I'm giving advice to my children. Why would I intentionally give you bad advice? And it isn't until later in life when you have your children, usually when they go off to college, in my experience, that they realize that, hey, dad was trying to give me some good advice. And I tell them, well, did you think I was going to give you bad advice so that you completely screw up your life and get to the point where you're miserable and you blame it all? Why would I intentionally do that? I don't think most parents are going to do that, nor do I think a lawyer will as well. Next, if it's important to you, you'll find a way to make it happen. If it's not, you'll find an excuse. And the reason why I bring this up is I see it mostly in clients that have drug and alcohol issues. And I understand drug and alcohol can be a very powerful thing. But like most things in life, if it's important to you, you'll find a way to make it happen. If you don't care about it, you're going to blow it off, right? Scott, you need to get up and run 3 miles before you head out to work in the morning. Yeah, not exactly high on my importance scale these days. I'm trying, I'm working on it. But if it was really important to me, I'd figure out a way to make it happen. Like I said, drugs and alcohol can be a terrible thing. I'm not trying to say it's just that simple, but I've seen people where they hit their bottoms and all of a sudden being sober means something to them and it becomes important to stay clean and sober. So if it's not important to you, you'll find an excuse. Okay. Just like sometimes like, oh, it's cold outside. And then the lovely Miss Kristen says, yeah, but the treadmill's in the basement. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Oh, my heel today. Oh, I'll come up with all kinds of excuses. Same thing in life, ladies and gentlemen. If it's important to you, you'll find a way. And finally, the number 12 of the 12 undeniable truths, and not in any particular order, but just numbered. All relationships are based upon respect. Okay. Now, obviously, when you get married, it's respect, friends, employers, employees. It's a respect situation, or it should be, right? You should have mutual respect for anybody. But I remember in my early days as an attorney, I was doing lots of court-appointed work. So if there was a conflict with the public defender, I would get the clients that even the public defenders didn't want, and the public defenders will take anybody. And I would get calls from the court and say, hey, Scott, we got this difficult client. Would you take this case? And I'm like, sure, Judge, no problem. I got this. And I go talk with the client, and, I show up there and, hello, Mr. So-and-so, how do you? Pleasure to meet you, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, tell me about your case. What do you think of the issues? What do you think's going on, etc. And at one point, this guy had gone through like 4 attorneys. And I said, well, why is it that you can get along with everybody? I said, people are saying, oh, don't take this guy. He's a complete jerk. He's going to be an ass to you. How can you get along? Why are we getting along just fine? And the client said, you treated me with respect. Okay. And this guy, he grew up, bad situation, poverty, broken home. And basically, for lack of it, he was always treated like crap by a lot of people. And when he got in trouble, the attorneys would come and they would look at him and they would look at his history and say, you're a piece of crap. You're going to get this. They're going to. I said, well, I just came in. I referred you, by your last name. I called you sir. It's not a big deal. It's kind of habit for me. I was in the military. Hello, sir. How are you? Unless you correct me otherwise, I'll be polite to you. And he goes, of all the attorneys I ever talked to, he goes, you're the first one that ever called me that. And it meant something to him. And he says, I treated him with respect. And I always thought that I had, other clients as well. And it never really made a difference. But when the case got resolved, and then the client took the, disposition that was probably the best that was going to be able to be worked out, the judge asked me, like, how were you able to get along with him? And I said, Judge, I treated him with respect. And the judge, I remember, he goes, yeah, I should probably do that sometimes too. I think I forget it. And sometimes I think we all forget it. But at the end of the day, we can have civil conversations about subjects, even on subjects in which we agree to disagree upon. But if you do it respectfully, you can still be friends. So, I think that's probably one of the, being humble. There's 2 types of people in the world, those that are humble and those that are about to be, and treat everybody with respect. If you can do that, you can get along with just about everybody. So that guy made an impact on me. And it was just because I treated him nicely. Everybody else told him, this is what you're going to do. I asked him, what would you like to do? It's your case. And everybody always said, well, this is what you're going to have to do. And you're going to lose this and you're going to lose that. And he had to come to the conclusion that these others were right, but they didn't show him any respect, whether they were too busy for him, whether, they just didn't like his history. They didn't like him. He could be rude and abrupt, but let's try it. Try off being respectful. If it doesn't work out, we can always go the other extreme, but we're working for the same goal, which is, what's the client's best interest. So, all right, that went really long. Sorry for everybody to wait, particularly our Patreons, to get that done. But anyway, I want to thank everybody. Thanks for joining us. Like, subscribe if you have not, share with a friend. Watch all of our previous videos that are up on YouTube as well as our podcasts. You can do that. Just simply go to your favorite podcasting app, Crime Talk with Scott Reich. Boom, download 4 going on 5 years of content there. So, all right. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on Crime Talk.